We live. And we are here. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Régine Bridges the Gap. Today I have special guest Kenny from Afroconex. Please
Hey,
say
hey,
hello.
hey. Hey, Régine. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
No problem. You know I love what you do. I love everything that you do. I know what you do, but audience doesn't know what you do. So if you could please say your name, what is Afroconex? What is the mission? What exactly do you do?
All right, thank you. So Afroconex is a passion project of mine. It's a project that Manuel Kanza and I have decided to jump into. And really, what we're trying to do with Afroconex is highlight the beauty of Afro dances that's happening around the world and build connections between all the different Afro cultures. So that's the main focus of Afroconex, and we're going to do that by obviously featuring dancers on Instagram, talking about the dances, documenting the culture of the dances, because documentation is something that's not happening a lot in the culture of Afro dance, as well as creating documentaries and dance docuseries that tells the story of these dances. So that's the mission in the overall mission of Afroconex. Yeah, you're on mute.
I know I muted myself so that I wouldn't be like, oh wow, all in the camera. But yeah, so friends, look at this. This is Kenny's blog. We recently just collabed recently, didn't we,
Yes.
Kenny?
So we recently
Talk more about the
collaborated, but that
mhm.
project is not out yet. So you guys need to stay tuned for it. So you guys know that Regine was in Rio. This was what, your third time, fourth time?
Fourth, yeah, I guess, but I was just kind of like on vacation. But yeah, like,
Right. So
something
this
like
time you
that.
actually were able to just relax and you were not like back to back to back drills in the
Yep.
samba school. So we have a special project that we collaborated on. It's funny. The idea just popped in my head. I saw you made a post and I was like, yo, let's make this happen. And you made it happen. So you guys should stay tuned for that. We'll be dropping that in the next week to 2 weeks. We're still waiting to put it all together. But what you did and what we collaborated on in Rio is exactly what we want to do with Afroconex. We want to capture how Afro dances are happening throughout the world. And so one of the things that Manuel and I want to achieve with Afroconex is we're broadening the definition of Afro dance. Right. So Afro dance right now for many people simply represent just the dances that are coming out of Africa. But if you travel to Latin America, Brazil, Cuba, Afro has always been a descriptor for their culture,
Exactly.
right? So Afro Brazilian culture, Afro Cuban, Afro Colombian. So we are roping Afro Caribbean, so we're roping the diaspora into the Afro conversation because we are of Afro cultures. So what you did in Rio in capturing how Pasinho dance happens in the community is what we're trying to depict. So right now you're showing people our blog, and what's on the blog right now is all of the work that we've published so far. So each Instagram post correlates to a blog post. And so if you're on our Instagram, which is at Afroconex, you can click the link in bio and it will take you from the posts, from the Instagram post directly to our website. And you'll be able to see the different blogs and additional information pertaining to what you're seeing in the blog, in the Instagram posts. So one of the things we're also doing is we have this section on the blog called Meet the Dancer. So I'm a firm believer that dance is one of the most important part of Afro culture, right? Without Afro dances, I don't think there would be Afro culture.
That's
Yes,
a
the music is important, but the dance is what has amplified the culture. And so Afro Connects is heavily focused on the dancers because we believe that dancers are the creators of Afro culture.
I agree. And I actually wanted to ask you a quick question because I
Mhm.
know that we had so many conversations. I can only begin to name them. Shout out to everybody that's watching right now. Make sure that you go ahead and you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you also go to Afroconex on Instagram and you go ahead and you follow them. All right, you and
Yes, please give us a follow.
Manuel.
And who's watching right now? Can you see? I can't see who's watching.
No, they're not even saying anything. I think they're like kind of shy. But Lucas is a new subscriber. I think he's watching right now.
Okay.
So shout outs to him. We have Nidra in the house. Nidra is watching. Hello, Nidra. Hi.
Hey,
Nidra is
Nidra.
also a dancer. She is a diaspora dancer. She's a Pan African, and she's also a part of, we do things as well. One day I'll interview Nidra on Régine Bridges the Gap. But the quick question that I have for you, Kenny, was how did you and Manuel come up together and click? Because I remember we was all in dance class, and then all of a sudden y'all was like this. Y'all was like together. I
so
was like, well,
so
dang. I said,
man,
when did I miss the meetup? Did I miss the WhatsApp chat? Like, what happened?
so it's funny because Manuel, the story of Manuel and I actually started several years before I officially met him. So I used to take house dance, and I want to say it's maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago now. And I remember I used to take house dance with Kim Holmes, and she had every week or every month she would bring in different dancers from different cultures just to showcase how it all ties into each other, right? So even though that we were doing house dance, she wanted to show there was this urban style based on house dancing, similar to house dancing that was happening, and she wanted to show it to us. And so there were these kuduro dancers that came into class and were demonstrating kuduro, which was like 8 years ago. And for me, it stuck with me because honestly, I never saw people dance like that before, right? And so I've always been a house dance fan because
Yeah,
I
I
feel like
remember.
house dance is one of the forms where your individualism is key, right? Like you are free to be yourself, move the way you want to move, et cetera, et cetera. And so when I saw these dancers, I immediately started to follow them. I think they were called like oscuristas or something like that. And it was a group of guys and a group of girls. And flash forward, like 2018 was when I officially met Manuel. And I was like, when I met him, I said, hey, the first time I heard about this dance, I was in this class in New York. And he was like, wait, was it this class? Was it these dancers? I was like, yeah. He was like, that was me. I was like, oh. So then it was like, oh my God, I've been following you for so long, but I had no idea it was you because he was part of this group that was traveling throughout the world to spread Kuduro culture. And so from then we kind of click. And then for me as well, I've always been a fan of how Manuel moves.
Yeah,
Um,
I love
I
the way he
I
moves.
just think his dance is very unique. He embodies Afro in the sense of movement that can be traditionally linked to Afro movements, and then he incorporates it in an urban way. And so
Yeah.
I've loved that, and that's kind of my own dance philosophy when I dance. So, I take a lot of traditional cultural moves and I modify them for urban music. And so that's why if people see me dance, they're kind of like, well, what is he doing? It looks like Kuduro, but it's fused with something else. And so it has a lot of elements of traditional Afro movements. So Manuel and I clicked from then. He was visiting New York. I think we were in the same class as Regine, some of his first
Yeah.
few classes. And, a lot of those were through Afro Dance, Afro Dance New York, Afro Dance NYC.
Uh
Yes,
Nidra,
Jalen.
you still
Through
watching. I
Jalen.
think Nidra remembers that with Jalen.
Yes, it's through
Yeah.
Jalen.
I think
Which
it was, yeah, Afrobeats. Whatever happened to that?
Well, I think in the age of Corona, it's on pause because we can't
Oh
really meet
yeah.
in classes. But it still exists, and I'm pretty sure that once everything calms down, she'll be back in full force because she was an integral part of
She
spreading
was.
Afro
Yeah.
culture in the New York City area.
Yes,
She
she
was one of
was.
the first to feature many of the dancers who have blown up big now,
Yep.
right? So that's how I met Manuel. So I unofficially met him like several years ago, then officially met him when he was giving his workshops here in the city. And we
Hmm.
kind of just hit it off. He was new to New York. I was just, as someone who was a dance fan, I think we just connected talking about dance. It wasn't necessarily like me like linking up with him, say, hey, let's make a music video. Actually at the time, I was very green. I could not do any of those moves. And I took a few personal classes with him, and I literally felt like I had two left feet because I couldn't get it. It took me some time, and then obviously more and more practice and feeling the groove, you get better. So, but yeah,
Exactly.
the first time I danced kuduro, I was like, I love it, but I can't do it.
Well, you know what? I want to actually ask a more personal question.
Yeah.
Um, what inspired you to start traveling throughout Africa? What inspired you? What was like, this is it?
So so the first time I actually traveled to Africa was last year. So I'm pretty new, and I've only been to 3 countries, but I would really say two since one was a long layover, and you kind of don't want to count that because I didn't really fully experience the culture. But I my route to Africa actually started through the Caribbean, through Cuba, and through Brazil, right? So
Mhm.
going to places like Salvador Bahia, going to places like Santiago de Cuba, and just feeling that culture and that love for blackness and black culture. Um, it inspired me to go to the motherland where these cultures originated from. So that's how I got to Africa. So my first introduction to Africa was actually southeastern Africa in Mozambique, and I have yet to make it to West Africa because I feel like my West Africa trips are going to be a little bit have a different focus than my other trips so far because I think my lineage comes from West Africa
Yeah.
just because I'm from the Caribbean, and I
Yeah.
think that's where my lineage is from. I don't know because I've never done my DNA. But I would when I do get to West Africa, it will be not just a dance focused trip, but more of a soul searching
Soul search.
history
Yeah.
lineage type trip. But my trips so far to Africa have been heavily focused on exploring the music and dance culture that's happening.
Honestly. So, what tips would you give someone who's going to Africa, like who wants to travel there, who wants to just do what you did, basically, like go to Mozambique, go to Angola, go to different countries? What advice would you give them for somebody who's starting to venture to Africa? What advice would you give them?
Research. So research is very important, right? And some type of local contact. So I
Hmm.
think it's really important. So even before I got on the ground in Mozambique, I tried to connect with dancers. I tried to connect with artists that were there, just so I have some like-minded people that could help guide me in terms of where to go if you're seeking a certain experience, right? Especially when it comes to Afro culture, if you go on a lot of these travel blogs or etc., they're not necessarily focused on things that you may be interested in as someone who is interested in exploring Afro dance or Afro cultures, right? So yes, they might have like a great restaurant to eat at, but where do I go to see the kids participating in a cipher? Where do I go to hear the latest music that's moving the urban centers? So you definitely need to do research. The great thing about Instagram is it's a great place to start your research, right? Unfortunately, not everyone is as connected on the internet in Africa,
Hmm.
but there are people who are on the internet who have Instagram accounts, etc. Um, that, I think I find that people are very friendly, that you can DM them and say, hey, I'm interested in traveling to this country. I love what you have on your page. Could you help me with some questions I have, answer some questions I have, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely doing research, to connect with some like-minded people so that they can help guide you. Um, Understand a little bit of the language, or at least know the basics in
Language is
terms of
definitely, yeah, I agree. Language is definitely one of those.
language is
Well,
very important. You can
yeah,
feel either very alone or very part of the experience based on language.
that part. Now, I wanted to get into some other aspects. What are your thoughts on people that are, I guess, traveling, but kind of don't want to deal with whatever, I guess, the political climate is in some of these countries? For example, Angola has some issues, as we all know, as well as Brazil, as well as the Caribbean. And they're like, I kind of just don't want to be bothered with that. What are your thoughts about that? Do you think that people should somewhat be involved, or they should just stick to, like, staying at a resort and just, like you said, with the people that just post those photos of a great restaurant, but not really, like, looking at, like, in depth, like, I guess the political, or I guess the environmental climate of those places? What are your thoughts on that?
So it's a delicate topic, and it's a delicate situation because number one, we're outsiders, right? So we're only there for a moment of time. We're not there living the day-to-day experience.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, we come from a highly democratic country where freedom of speech is protected, and bodily harm and injury and threats to your families don't necessarily come with you speaking up. And so we have to recognize the reality of many of these countries as well, that even though that they are democratic in name, they're independent, and they may be democratic, they're not fully democratic in terms of how we experience democracy. So the ability to be highly critical of the government, or for people to be highly critical of the government, or for you as a traveler going in and to be highly critical of the government, it may not be acceptable, and it actually might be dangerous. So how I approach that is, I really try to understand the day-to-day life of the people I'm interacting with. Like, what are their struggles, um, and if there's any advice or opinion or feedback I can give them to help improve their situation, that's where I try to make an impact, right? So if it's a dancer that I'm interacting with and they have a difficult time, either paying for the internet or getting work as a dancer, it's giving them feedback. Well, hey, why don't you reach out to, I see this dancer's also from your country. Why don't you try to reach out to that dancer and make a connection? Or,
Right.
so just giving people ways to help improve their situations, because a lot of times the political climate does lead to the economic situation of the people, but and a lot of times people don't recognize that they can improve their situations if they get the right feedback and the right advice, right? So
But here's the thing. So the thing is, I guess I really want to talk about dancers mainly,
mhm,
dancers that are traveling. I feel like a lot of these dances that we do come from some sort of protest, if I must add.
yeah,
Especially the urban dances, they come from some kind of protest,
yes.
especially Kuduro. So, like, what do you think about that? Where people just go and take it, and I don't want to deal with the political climate. I just want to dance paseo. I don't want to deal with the banditos, and I don't want to deal with the problems of the favela. But I would much rather just go train and have fun and live my best life. That's not me. I don't do that.
No,
But
so I guess
Mhm.
it still goes back to what I was saying. So it's, even if you just want to dance, right?
Mhm.
I would advise dancers who are traveling and experiencing these cultures to interact with these dancers on a deeper level to understand what their struggles are, right? So we also try to capture that in the Afroconex when we do these meet the dancers. I
Mhm.
ask specifically, like, what are some of your challenges? If you are a black dancer from the favelas in Rio, what are your challenges as a black dancer in Rio, in Brazil, et cetera, et cetera? Because understanding what their challenges are, you can see how, if you want to, not everyone is going to be inclined to, right? How can you help to impact that in a more positive way, right? So is it you using your platform to bring more awareness to this dancer? Because that could mean this dancer could now give live stream videos of classes online because you've helped to amplify awareness of this dancer. How are you helping to change in any positive way the situation of the dancers you're interacting with? Because
Mhm.
you as an individual alone cannot change the full political climate that these dancers are living in, right? So me as a dancer going into Angola is not going to change the political climate in Angola, etc. However, acknowledging what the life, how these dancers are experiencing life, you understand how life is for them, and if there's anything you can do to help improve that, right? Because as dancers, we all struggle. The struggle of a dancer here in the US is completely different from the struggle of a dancer in, say, the favelas of Rio or the marginalized communities of Luanda. One of the things that I've noticed from interacting with dancers are, like, our access to technology here in the West is above and beyond what most dancers have access to. Just the cost of the
Mhm.
internet, the ability to afford these types of technology like an iPhone, etc. A lot of time these dancers don't have phones with the best quality, so they can't make great videos. So you have people, we're all competing to be on these social media networks, but we don't have even playing fields to compete.
That's a
One
fact.
being internet access, and the second being the technology that we're using once we have internet access to create the content.
So now I've had my fair shares of this type of conversation with you when I tried to connect with some individuals outside of the US. And I get it that the internet and technology is just not up there. But remember, I told you that I often run into some folks that just simply, not all, because there's a lot of hungry people out there, but like there's just some folks that just hit this wall of defeat.
Right.
And I really don't like to always bring that up, but I did. It is kind of like something that does annoy me a lot because I always see the potential and the passion in people. And I just feel like they just don't utilize it. So,
So,
although we can reach the hand out, sometimes the hand is not moving. It's like, well, damn, like, what do you want me to do for you? Like, do you really want to dance? Do you really want to do this? Do you really want to, like, have you run into that outside of the
um
run into that? Like, has that happened to you where you said, I got this amazing plan for you, it's paid. Do this XYZ, and it's just like,
So again, I think that actually, yes, I'm running into that with Afroconex when I'm collaborating with dancers, and it's simply, I think it's a difference of culture, right?
yeah.
So we are coming from a culture where efficiency and productivity is valued, right? And so
Mhm.
efficiency, productivity, and individualism is valued. So your individual input and energy can create a good outcome. That's how we think. That's how we think
Yeah.
as Americans. And so when you're working with people who come from a culture where they don't necessarily see that their individualism and individual energy can result into a change of life for them, right? Because they see people work hard and they're still in living in the same communities. They don't see change happening as a result of hard work as much as would see hard work equals to a positive outcome here in the US.
Right.
So it's very difficult sometimes to work with people that already have this mentality that no, me working hard is not going to change my life. Um, and so yeah, I run into that, and what I need to, when I run into it, I have to take a step back and recognize the what's important to for this person, because to me, what I think is important to them might not be what is important to them, right? So for
You're
me, it's
right.
like, oh my God, do this. People are gonna be booking you. You're gonna get students from all over the world. You're gonna become a popular teacher. And for them, they might just be like, my focus right now is to get a better house, to get better housing,
Yeah.
and you know, and then I have to recognize that, okay, if that's your goal, what's your plan, right? So sometimes it involves you interacting in a non-dance capacity, like, all right, so just tell me what your plans are, and then it's not my place to say whether that's a good plan or a bad plan, but at
Right.
least for me to say what's your plan, it's me saying, all right, I hear you, I understand you, I would just want to make sure that you have something in mind of what you're going to be, what you need to do to get there.
Right.
And then you can then weave into, if that's their plan and their goal, you can then say how giving this class online is going to help them achieve that goal,
That
right?
long term.
Because
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
long-term goals, because now it's tying into what's a priority for them.
That's a
Because what's a
fact.
priority for what's a priority for us, what's a priority for me as Afroconex, and if I want to put out content, etc., might not tie into the priority of the dancer, right?
You're right.
So it's really understanding, again, it's really understanding these dancers and the lives that they live in. And the other thing is that dance is such an integral part of these communities that sometimes they do not view dance the way we view it.
That is a fact. That
It's
is true.
just something it's like it's almost like breathing. It's like it just happens for them. It's
Yep.
like we just dance. And so that is the biggest struggle, I think, as communities, as in the Afro community, is for something that's such a part of the day-to-day life. How do we get people to recognize that it has a greater value? It's almost like air, right? We take
Right.
air for granted. But when you can't breathe, like you get corona and you can't breathe, you recognize how important air is to you, the ability to breathe.
Exactly. Yep. You're so right. You are so right. And like, I mean, I guess so. Another thing that I wanted to say, welcome to whoever just came in. Say hey, what's up? We're gonna watch a
What's
video really
up?
quickly and get Kenny's thoughts on the video. Kenny has already seen these videos already, but I'm just gonna throw one in there and
Okay.
get his thoughts, and we're all just gonna watch it really quickly and get
Take
his
it away.
thoughts, my thoughts. But say hello, make sure that you subscribe to Afroconex on YouTube. You like them on Instagram as well. And leave a heart or a like and subscribe to Régine Bridges the Gap. Okay. So I'm going to get this video together, but really quickly, another question that I
Yeah.
have for you. What was it like in Cuba? I would love to know about Cuba. What was going on out there? Like, what's the process? What people got to do? They got to sneak in a suitcase? Like, what's going on? What exactly
So
do you have to do?
I literally went to Cuba the minute Obama changed the requirements to travel. As soon as like the minute it was signed, I probably like 3 weeks later I was on a plane to Cuba. Um,
What?
and so
You're right. You
I
actually are right. You're right. I
I
remember that.
got there right before it became a destination for a lot of U.S. travelers, and obviously my first introduction to Cuba was Havana. So I think
Mhm.
that was what 2015. 2015, yeah, around 2015, and I fell in love with it. And mostly, obviously, for dance, the actually what convinced me. I'm originally from the Caribbean, and so Cuba has kind of always had this like mystical aura about it because it's one of those countries where you get some of the culture, but you don't understand it because it's not fully open, right, to
Right.
Americans. And so I actually saw a dance performance from a Cuban dance group at City Center here in New York. And it was like doing, I think, like the fall dance shows. And I think it was after that show, I was like, that's it. I'm going to Cuba. Because the like the dancing, and it was a dance performance, but they had a live band that was performing as the dancers were dancing. And so
Oh
it
wow.
just amplified the presentation. So there's one thing to have recorded music and dancers on the stage dancing to recorded music, but when you have the live music there, it just literally you float
It's
away.
something
It
about it.
takes you exactly.
Yeah.
So and this performance was obviously Afro-Cuban traditional movements mixed with modern, mixed with contemporary, mixed with ballet. So it's a potpourri of all these dance forms. And I literally said, I'm going to Cuba. And literally, I think I saw that show in like November, and then like February or something, or December, sometime in the early of the next year, the laws changed, and then I was
Hey,
literally
so now what
so it was
now what can we do?
right. So well, obviously, in this past year, under the Trump administration, they have really limited Americans' ability to easily travel to Cuba. People can still go, but you have the categories. There are less categories you can go under. I think the people, the not the people, but support the Cuban people still the available category as an individual you can go under. But obviously, we have an administration change that's happening in January, in less than 4 weeks or 4 weeks. So it's going to be interesting to see if travel is resumed under the Biden Harris administration and how easily it would be for Americans to go. So in the past 2 years, I've abandoned Havana as much as I love Havana, but I've abandoned Havana for Santiago de Cuba. And I went to Santiago in 2018 and it just resonated with me. It
Well,
like, I describe it as Havana is probably like your Sao Paulo, Rio, and Santiago is like your Salvador, Bahia.
wow.
So that's exactly how it is. Like, you like Rio is great, but when you get to Salvador, it's just another level of blackness, another level of identity and pride that you
Right.
don't necessarily feel in Rio, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing where you get like, for me, Santiago was like this place where they were not trying to be anyone but themselves. They were not
Themselves.
trying to be Miami. They were not trying to be España. They were not trying. They were just, we're black, we're Cuban, and we're proud.
Right.
And this is how we do it. Like, here's how we dance kuduro here. Here's how we dance dembow. This is how we do. This is how we do it. Like, everything had their own localized flavor. It was not like they were taking hip hop dance and just spitting out verbatim. They would take a hip hop move and they would cubify it. They would add some
Yeah.
type of their own local elements, which I love because I'm like, you should never lose your identity when you're dancing, even if you're learning a different style, right? You should
Right.
especially if it's street style. It's street style, which means your experiences should be incorporated into it.
You're right. Now, one thing I want to say, so let's get into this video that I want your thoughts on. Again,
Okay.
you've seen it already. And
What
so
video is it? I'm curious now.
you've seen it already. So we're gonna go ahead and we're going to play it. Hopefully it plays. Guys, my internet has been really, really bad due to the storm. It has been extremely a mess. That's what happens when you live in Jersey.
Ah, yes.
La niña tiene lo que tiene, sin ir al gym, mira cómo se mantiene. Una bebecita huracana, ella se bota, ella se destaca. Sigue con loco porque a baile le traga. Monta que yo sé que tu ritmo la saca. su premio. Ella se va, yeah. Está peleando de los 16.
Fuego.
Fuego.
All right.
La niña ahora tiene 18, ahora sí, porque ya mami tú estás en ley, esa es mi fanática, mi pocha, cuando me ve dice que le haga noche, me manda fotos por el chat, con una liga, se le parte el dólar pa' noche, ella le mete con ella, porque dice que hay una bella, dice que la tira buena como quiera, dice que la tira buena en una maca, tú no eres mi pieza, ya no eres mi pieza. Niña, tú eres mi pieza, dale perrea cada que te empieza. Oye, tú eres mi pieza, cama tú eres mi pieza. Oye, niña, tú eres mi pieza, te la trabajo cada que te empieza.
All right. What are your thoughts on that?
So that's actually the first video we launched with Afroconex, and it's actually a dancer in Santiago de Cuba named Sergio. And he's an excellent dancer, and it's a local style. It's a local Cuban style called repatero. And what I love about this video is, and what I love about traveling and seeing dances, I love seeing when there is some type of local culture, local dance culture happening. And so that's kind of also what we want to show with Afroconex, right? Because just because we don't necessarily see it happening on the internet or we don't have exposure to it doesn't mean that it's not happening. So you have all of these communities where dance is just happening. So these in Santiago de Cuba, they have all of these Afro groups that compete doing this style. They have ciphers, they have battles, and they try to outdo themselves. And what I love about this video is this was all freestyle. This was not choreographed by him. This was freestyle. We literally played the music for him the day of the shoot, and he just went
off. It reminds me very much of like Cartagena or what's the Santa Marta of Colombia.
Right.
It reminds me a lot of like their style, or even like Quibdó, the Choco style, the salsa choque. That's what it looked like, and I was like, oh wow, that's really amazing. It's
and
crazy.
So what you notice too, like Régine, is that even though these styles are being created in different communities, when you travel and you know other styles, you can recognize the similarities, right? So that's what you just did right now, and so that's also showing the connection, right? Like even though we're living in these different places, like when we move to music, oftentimes the movements are very similar, even if we're having different experiences.
Exactly. Well, that was the one video that I'm going to show because my internet is not being my best friend right now. So we're just going to go ahead and stop it there. But guys, we are reaching the end of our live. Please make sure that you go to Afroconex, like, subscribe on YouTube, and also follow on Instagram.
Yes.
I want to thank you so much for being on the live. Do you have any closing words for anybody who wants to just go out and venture through dance, the diaspora, and just like really learn and take everything in, but they never really been on a plane. They don't have the passport. They don't got a visa. They don't got anything going on, but they want to go. They want to make that step. What advice would you give to them? One advice.
So the first advice I would say is obviously get a passport. It's very easy. Get yourself a passport.
Well, right now, not really.
Well, when I say get a passport, I'm already in 2021. 2020 is over. Thank the Lord. 2020 is over. So 2021 is a new beginning, guys. Get yourself a passport. Get down to your Photoshop. Get your passport photo taken. Apply, get a passport. Your passport is your window to experience the global Black culture. There is Black culture happening all around this world, especially throughout the Americas. That
it's not just in the US.
It's not just in the US that we need to experience and build bonds with. And then just see the beauty of how Black people move, right? So the American Black culture is different, but it is also very similar to these other cultures, right? And so people speak different languages. You will see that there is commonality even with it, with the difference in languages. And I think it's a beautiful thing when we can build those bridges and form this global Black community that uplifts each other, because it makes us stronger. It shows the diversity of Blackness, because so often people do not think that Blackness is diverse,
That's
but
a fact.
we are very
Very
diverse.
diverse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Kenny, for being on the live with us today.
Thank you for having me. I love Régine Bridges the Gap. I think what you're doing is beautiful. Ties right into my vision as well. So keep it up. And
Yeah,
I know you have a trip coming up, so
I do.
I'm excited to see what
I'm
transpires
excited
from that.
too. I really am. I'm so excited. Um, but friends, please, again, make sure you like and subscribe. Régine Bridges the Gap. Make sure you go and follow Kenny as well with Afroconex Emmanuel. Please make sure you give us a thumbs up, everything. All right. Tune in next week. We have Afro Mexican culture being tied in with Southern roots with Cheapo, live from Mexico.
Love her.
Yeah.
All right.
So please tune in, everyone. Make sure you like, subscribe. Yet again, I'm gonna keep saying it until you do it. Make sure you do it. Kenny, thank you so much for being on the
Thanks
live.
for having me. All right.
No problem.
Bye, everyone.
Everyone, take care.